Welcome to the show. Today we're talking about a topic that's close to many parents' hearts, introducing money concepts to our kids. Whether you're trying to teach them the value of the dollar or just figuring out how to handle their allowances, this episode is for you. So let's get started. I'm curious, how are you currently approaching money with your children? Do you have a system in place, or are you still figuring it out? How do your children respond to these lessons if you're doing it? Are they picking up the concepts? Or is it still a bit of a struggle? We'll explore different methods and share some tips and tricks that might just make teaching your children about money, both younger and older, a bit easier and more effective. Stick around as we unpack these questions and more in today's episode. So let's make managing money a family affair. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Lexi Smith is a mum of two, and she has an ENTP personality. She also has a passion for reducing financial stress among parents. With a background in financial planning, Lexi now runs her own financial coaching business called Moneyvine across Australia. Whether you're navigating parental leave or just dealing with the rising cost of living, Lexi offers a myriad of tips and tricks to help you improve your financial position, all while having some fun along the way. Hi Lexi, welcome to Parenting and Personalities podcast. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
Thank you, Kate, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, we're going to start with a bit of personality chat today because we've been talking about your MBTI profile at the ENTP and how it ties into your approach of looking at finances and possibly coaching around finances.
Okay.
Now, money is something that I hate because I don't want a budget. I just want to spend it. So, I desperately need someone like you in my life to help me out with these kind of things. So let's break down the ENTP. So the ENTP is an extrovert. They love being out in the world. They're big picture. They have a really big picture view on things, logical and pretty flexible and easygoing. So tell us what that means for you as a financial planner and as a person.
Well, I only discovered the profiles really recently and it blew my mind. I couldn't believe, I just felt like my whole life made sense all of a sudden. And it really opened my eyes to really understand why everyone is so different and why certain things will work for one person and won't work for another.
That's the thing I love about the MBTI is that a lot of us, in fact, most of us, don't actually understand why other people are different. We just think we're right and we can't get why they don't do the right thing all the time for us. So that is a fabulous outcome for you. So how did that work for you? Like what have you done since then to put things into place perhaps and look at life a bit differently?
I don't think I've done anything differently, but I have started to get my clients to find out what profile they are so that we can have a bit of a head start, really, to see, because there are so many ways that you can manage money, just like there are so many ways that you can be active. So, some people, the gym works for them. Other people, it's walking or a dance class or golf or boot camp. There are so many ways to be active and there are so many ways to manage money. And it's not that one is right or one is wrong. It's just what works for one person won't necessarily work for the other.
Cool. So it's really become a tool for you to help work out what's best for other people while you're doing it, not the way you see it through your eyes.
Well, I guess in the past, it's been a bit of trial and error with finances. So we work together, find out, what the situation is, where we're trying to get to, and then we might try a few different activities and tools. And sometimes it's just a matter of, as I said, trial and error. But now with the profiles, we can get just a bit of a head start so we can get there a little bit faster potentially.
And that's the truth, because if you knew who I was and my attitude towards money, then you could start in a very different spot as to somebody who was perhaps an ISTJ who are very organised and structured and like saving and have their little pots all lined up of money. So it is a fabulous tool for that. So I'm really pleased that that's all working for you in that sense. So Lexi, let's talk about let's talk about how you came to be where you are today. What's a bit of your background? Can you just give us a little bit of that?
It started in year 9, my story of like where I've ended up. I decided that I wanted to be a financial planner, and I pursued that, finished high school, went to university, studied financial planning, worked in financial planning as a financial planner for 10 years, and then took a sidestep. So I'm not a financial planner anymore. I am doing financial coaching. So the way that they differ is that financial advice or financial planning is very focused on superannuation and insurance and investing, whereas financial coaching is more about the everyday money management, the habits, the behaviors, the psychology around money it touches on as well. So it's quite a different service, but it is I guess, supportive of financial planning. So I refer to advisors in some cases, but it's more accessible as well to Australians now that financial advice has become so expensive.
And for some people too, financial advice is all very well, but if you're not coached or helped to follow that financial advice, someone can always set you up with budgets. But if you haven't got someone there coaching you along the way and saying, yes, you've got that bit right, this is all good, then you can fall into an absolute heap. It really doesn't matter. And often you have to release control of your money too if you've got a financial advisor in that sense too. They might control your money rather than you having control of it yourself. So so the choice that you made, when did you go into your own business then?
That was nearly 4 years ago now. And it's such a new industry in Australia, financial coaching. There aren't many of us around. It's much more popular overseas. And I can very confidently say now that this is actually what I thought that I wanted to do when I was in year 9. It was just that the industry was very different to what, how old would I have been then? 14 or something, what I thought it was. So have always loved helping family and friends with money and never really understood in my younger years why the people around me at the drop of a hat couldn't go and do that Europe trip or whatever it was, because I was very good at saving and could do these things, whereas people around me might have been living pay to pay. So that's what I help people do now, is to do the things they want to do, which is really exciting.
It is. It's very exciting. And the fact that you knew from such an early age is pretty incredible, to have that financial wisdom at such a young age is amazing. I would have loved to have had that myself. So when it comes to budgeting, what's just a little bit of advice? We're going to talk about parents and budgeting in a minute, but in general, what's a few tips for people on how to budget? Your basic
Well, a lot of
major
people
ones.
are surprised when I tell them that I don't budget myself. It's just not the thing that works for me. So for anyone that does want to put together a budget, because there is a time and a place for it and it can be very valuable, it's about getting the numbers that you're putting into it to be realistic. So just as an example, if you're budgeting for groceries and you say that you're going to spend $250 a week, but you've got a family of 4, maybe that's not realistic. If you break it down to a per person, per day, per meal amount, even $300 a week is still only $11 per day per person in that scenario for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, plus cleaning products and things like that. So just being realistic on the numbers that you put in.
Absolutely. So therefore, if I love that idea that you don't have to budget, that number one thing for me, but there are a lot of people out there who do that. And like you say, sometimes you have to not over budget so that you're not living a realistic lifestyle. Like you say, you have to be a bit flexible, don't you? Why do you talk to parents? What made you divert from, dealing with everybody to actually niching into parents or people who are preparing to be parents? What was your focus there?
Well, I have a nearly 5-year-old and an 8-year-old myself, and so speaking to other parents is very relatable. It's always good if I'm in meetings and let's say one of them is home from school one day sick and they walk in, it's not the end of the world. The other person on the other end, they totally get it if they are a parent. If they're not a parent, maybe not so much. Being able to share the things that I'm experiencing in my life and the things that are working for me is obviously very valuable. I speak to my kids a lot about money, and so I share that online and can potentially help other parents speak to their kids about money, because we know that our attitude towards money, our behaviors and our habits around money, they're formed in a really, really young age. And so it's really important to have these conversations with our kids about money to really set them up for the future.
Yeah, and that's what we'll be talking about today. I also think as a family, when we're talking about families, listening to you talk about that, is that families also have different occupations. So you might have a family who's got doctors, you might find someone who's got health people, and the conversations around the dinner table are quite different. So our family is very business orientated. And so our conversation is often about money. It's about loans and it's about expenses and was that business a good one and financial. So our children have grown up with this constant batter of money. And I remember my daughter saying one day about a friend of hers not understanding a certain concept about how much to borrow and what her loan repayments would be on something. And this was only about 16 years of age. And she said she didn't get it. She didn't know anything about those things. And I said, well, her mum and dad are doctors. They're probably sitting there talking about operations and totally different conversations. So sometimes it can be what lifestyle you're leading that can influence your chats about money with your children. But I agree with you. I think it's really, really important that we do talk money with our kids. So can you tell us what kind of things you do with the parents first to manage their money, and then we'll talk about how you talk to parents about letting their kids know about money.
Mm-hmm. So when working with anyone, not just parents, it's about working out, well, where do you currently stand? So what do you own? What do you owe? What is your income? What are your expenses? So a lot of people don't know those things. They've never actually taken time to sit down and write it down. So it's about creating that space and that time to go through that process. Sometimes people are in a better position than they thought, sometimes not so good. And then we speak about, well, where are we trying to get to? What has triggered these meetings? There's got to be something. You don't just wake up one day and think, I'm going to go and see a financial coach today. There's got to be something in your life that's gone on. And then we come up with a plan, and I love bite-sized chunks within that plan in order to get you to where you want to go. So for some people, it might just be a one-off meeting where we sit down and we understand, are there any tweaks that we can make to our finances to make a big difference? Because we don't talk about money, typically, it's such a taboo topic. We're quite good at speaking about mental health and politics and religion these days, but not about money. And so there's people out there that I speak to that they just have a one-off meeting because they just don't really know if they should be doing anything differently, and they don't particularly want to talk to anyone in their close circle about this. And for other people, it's that they really want some more ongoing support and accountability. Accountability is such a big thing. I know that with myself, with health and fitness, if I am just left to my own devices, I don't exercise. But if I pay and then show up to a group, then I'm going to do that. So accountability and goals, we know that we are much more likely to achieve our goals if we have an accountability partner. So it's about coming up with that plan. So every single meeting is different because it's all personalized to what's going on in that individual's or in that couple's life. Does that answer your question?
That's cool. And that's a great answer. And the thing is true is that often we don't look at what we're spending. We're too busy spending fast and possibly a bit out of control without actually sitting down. I know that describes me. So to sit down and actually look at everything is a fantastic idea and a great concept to do. And I think that if you do that for yourself with someone like you and being told check back in, check back in. And when you're paying money, money talks. It really does. I agree with you. If you're paying money for something, then you will usually do it, and if you don't, you need to get out. But having that support behind you.
As they say, when you pay attention.
Yes. Oh, that's true. Very true. So when you talk to the parents that you're talking to, and they might be finding handling money challenging or the income challenging, and they have children, and usually parents don't talk to children about money in the sense that often we don't want to overwhelm them with it either. We don't want them to feel bad about the money. But what kind of things do you think that they should talk about if they're going to be talking about money with them?
It's definitely an age-appropriate thing. So, what I talk to my 5-year-old about, what I talk to my 8-year-old about, what I talk to my, 13-year-old neighbor about, they're all going to be different conversations. So I like to talk about everyday things and going with the flow of the conversation. So sometimes when I speak to my 8-year-old about something, she's just not in the mood and she kind of just won't engage in that conversation, and we just let it go. We leave it. And then there's been other times where I don't recall how it came up, but we were driving to school one day and I started to explain that some people own their houses, and maybe the bank owns part of it, and some people rent. And then that led to a discussion about appreciating assets and depreciating assets. And we went like really deep. And she was really enjoying it. She was asking lots of questions. And we didn't really talk about it after that conversation, but at least she has been exposed to those words and those concepts once, and that's potentially once more than other people in her circle. A bit like what you shared earlier about your daughter, that you exposed her to those concepts. And so when it got to the point where that concept applied to her or a family member or a friend, she had a little bit of a head start, a little bit of a grasp on that concept. So, if you're paying a bill and your child happens to ask, "Mummy, what are you doing? Daddy, what are you doing?" You can start to explain, "I'm paying an electricity bill," and maybe they just say like, "Oh, whatever," and walk away. Or maybe they say, "What's that? But why?" And to try and really answer those questions in that moment when they are engaged.
Because I think we miss a lot of opportunities when you say that. I think we miss a lot of opportunities. We're too busy saying to them, "Hey, turn that don't waste power. Turn the electricity off. Turn the light off. Whatever," without ever showing them this is what we spend, on electricity, and this is what we pay each month. Without doing it at a time when you're really frustrated and angry, and you just go, "This is what the power bill looks like, and you're wasting too much electricity." To let them know that there are bills for that. Because, look, I've got to admit, my kids have moved out recently, and they're quite shocked at all their bills, and I wish I'd done a better job of showing them. I do wish I'd done a better job of doing that, exposing them to that.
Something that I do quite frequently, and I have for many years now, is to give comparisons for things. So it might be that my kids have asked for something at the shops, and maybe it doesn't cost a lot of money, but I just, it's just that thing I don't want to buy. I don't need to add more clutter at home. And so I'll say to them, "Well, would you rather that, or would you rather go camping on the weekend? What's your choice between those two things?" And I guarantee every day of the week they say they want to go camping. So they will quite happily, 9 times out of 10, put that toy or that thing at the shops back, because they know that we're directing our money to camping on the weekend. And so whatever we've got going on in our life, there was a time that we were talking about adding a second story to our house, and the kids thought that was very, very cool to have an upstairs. And so whenever they wanted anything, basically whenever they wanted to spend money that I didn't want to spend, I would just remind them that we're talking about the second story. So to involve them in a conversation, to not necessarily say we can't afford it or we don't have the money or anything like that, but to show them that we have choices with money, and it's about, you can have anything you want, you just can't have everything you want.
Which is very, our children are huge consumers. Which is a great way of diverting that consumerism into something that is equally enjoyable and much more longer term enjoyable and would last for longer than something that
and in line with their values,
and, like you say, discard. Yes, yeah, absolutely. So another thing that I would spoken to you about was also saying that not saying to our children the wrong words. So I was reading an article in the newspaper the other day, and this woman who actually was a financial advisor said that she'd had a bit of a wake-up call because her 9-year-old son had asked to buy something at the shop, just like we're talking about, and she'd casually said, "Oh, don't have any money for that today." And she said that his response was, "So we're poor." And she said, oh my goodness, it made her realize how those offhand comments about money can really leave a really big impression on kids, because we always use throwaway lines like that. No, not today. I don't have any money, to get rid of that. Whereas rather you've given them a choice. Well, no, you can have that or we're going camping. But even the thought of what an impact that has on them, because all of a sudden, if he hadn't verbalized that and just kept in his head, oh, we're poor, that would have been a pretty, it would be something that would live in his head, and maybe he'd struggle with that. So she actually said to them, she said, look, we're not actually struggling. It's just that that's fun money, and the fun money budget was all used up for the moment. So really, we have to be careful about these conversations that we do have with our children about being poor, because for children, you are their caregiver. Money, you are supporting them. They can't do anything while they're younger in that sense to support that. So I'd never really thought about it. I mean, honestly, my adult kids ask me for money all the time, and I always say I'm poor. But for a young child, I think that's quite scary.
Yeah, our
So
language
what do you think about
definitely
that type of thing?
matters. And I definitely agree with you. We need to be careful about what we say and how we say it, but also to ourselves. If we tell ourselves that we are bad with money, that is not necessarily fostering a good relationship with money. So we might still say, I'm not good with money, but we might add the word yet. So if we say I'm not good with money yet, that means that we've still got a chance to kind of work this out. Or it could be, I'm getting better with money every day. And so if you keep telling yourself you're getting better with money every day, chances are you'll get better with money every day.
I love that. I love that. It's
Mm.
true. It's positive psychology, isn't it? There is that talking to the self and the brain taking on what you say. So my mantra will be, I'll be a lot better with money from here on in.
Awesome.
Excellent. So, how do we all look at the Barefoot Investor, and he's all about pots of money and, different areas of where to put money. Do you use anything like that with your children on explaining how they might save and different things for saving?
No, I don't, because that's not how I choose to manage money myself.
Yeah.
And so it just doesn't come up in conversation that way. But I don't necessarily disregard it for other people. Like we were speaking about earlier, what works for one person's not going to work for another. So it's about finding out, like, just because I give my kids choices at the shops, like I just shared, that just might not be the thing for you and your children. But it's about continuing to try different things until you find something that does work. So yes, there are certainly families out there who allocate, 10% of their pocket money to giving, and maybe 40% to saving, and 50% to buying things. I think about the way that, my relationship with money and how I've managed money over the years. And I think a lot of it stems from my childhood, where I was always encouraged to save. I still remember the day like it was yesterday, when I was 4 or 5 years old and my mum took me to open my bank account, and it was such a big thing. It really stood out in my mind. And so I think that it does play a really, really big part. And it's not to say that if you didn't have those conversations as a kid or those experiences as a kid, that you can't be good with money later on. It's just that you need to retrain your brain, in a sense, to look at money differently. And it might just be one little sentence or one different way of looking at things that can really make a big impact on how you look at money, how you manage money, your relationship with money, all of those things.
So as a parent, what would you advise them to do? because obviously it's all going to be very different ways of doing things. So what would your advice be around helping your child understand money? What are the things that you think are the most key when it comes to educating them from your 3-year-old up? You can give me a few stages that you feel is really
So apart from
beneficial.
having just regular conversations and keeping money as like an open conversation, aside from that, I think it's becoming really good with money yourself so that they can witness and see your behaviors and what you do with money, because they're not just listening. Sometimes they listen, they're watching. So there's one activity in particular that I love to take clients through just as a one-off activity. And this isn't to say to do this in front of your kids, but if you start to do these activities and get really good with money, your kids are going to watch that. So I call it the traffic light activity. And basically you can spend 10 minutes on it. It doesn't need to be time consuming. You look back at your recent transactions and you highlight each transaction one of 3 colors. So the green transactions are those that you had to spend money on. Maybe it's mortgage or rent, groceries, medical bills, all that stuff. You know what the green is, right? Your gut feeling. Red is for transactions where you look at them and you're like, oh, whoops, I probably shouldn't have spent that money. Green also, I should have added, can also be for things that bring you joy, that you would spend that money again in a heartbeat. That was really important to you. It could be an anniversary dinner or your favorite hobby or whatever it might be. And then anything that isn't green or red kind of is maybe a bit debatable, sits in the middle, and that would be orange. And so what that gives us is a very visual illustration of what our spending habits have been like in that period. And so if we start to do these little things ourselves, with or without the kids, like maybe depending on the age, you can get the kids involved, but it will change the way that we're managing money, which will be something that the children witness and are a part of over time.
That's a great idea. Do you use that a lot with your clients when you're working with them?
I get everyone to do it once, just as a bit of a different, looking at things through a different lens, because it might be that uncovers that all of the red or orange transactions, maybe they were all retail, and in which case we know that retail is something we need to come up with, like a tool or activity or something in that regard in relation to retail. But maybe eating out isn't a problem, or it might be that all of those transactions could be alcohol or something like that. Like every situation is different.
That's a fabulous idea. No, I think that's really great. And I think doing it as a fun game almost with your older children, looking over and going, oh, maybe we did. And today's materialism is just massive and it's so easy to buy. So it is there will probably be a lot of red things on mine and maybe other people's pages, I'm sure, if we were looking at it like that. Can you, before we wrap up, can you just give us your top tips on what to say to your kids, and maybe one really good tip on saving? Because look, personality types, this is where I do love personality types, because I save. I can save if I really need to, but I really do love to be able to spend quite freely. And when we had our children, my husband's a little bit the same. He's quite perceiving, and when we had our children, we started them off with a bank account, but because of who I am, I forgot to give them their money to put in the bank account on bank days, and it ended up that I'd give them $100 at the end of term because I'd forgotten to put the dollar in, and this is me, this is me going, I really don't care. And in the end, we closed their bank accounts because I couldn't remember and they didn't really care and it didn't really happen. So they've seen their money go through in different ways in that sense of money. But had I had someone like you to listen to, I probably would have been different. I probably would have changed the way I did things. However, what are your top tips on that?
Don't feel bad. Just quickly, don't feel bad about that whole bank account thing, because my kids, they have bank accounts open, but there is nothing in them, and there have been no transactions. But I don't feel bad about that. It's just that they haven't seemed not ready. Ready's not the right word, but they haven't seemed that engaged when we've gone down that path. They haven't really grasped not the concept, but hasn't been the right time yet. I will know when it's the right time. Just like I was sharing earlier when my daughter engaged in that conversation about appreciating assets and depreciating assets, and we went with it. I don't want to force it either, because I don't want them to see the bank account as like a boring thing that, takes my money and I can't buy my toys. I don't want it to be like that either. So yeah, don't feel bad about anything you do with your kids with money, as long as you're focusing.
Thank you. I'm absolved. I'm absolved of all guilt, and it is true. I never viewed it, like you have just said, as create what a bank account might look to a child, because they, like you say, they might look at it as stealing all their pocket money in that sense, or this is really boring, I've got to do it. So really, unless it has meaning for them, probably not that important in stages. I love that it's when they're ready a lot of the time, but you have to be prepared as a parent to make that money conversation when they're ready. So you have to be open about money and really be watching the whole time. So just give me 3 tips on money.
Okay, we've gone through some of them already, but they're really important ones. So to openly speak to your children about money, what's the word I'm looking for? To demonstrate good money habits and behaviors, and to be really conscious of the language that we use around children. Because even though I always say, why don't you listen? They are listening to us.
They are. And I think that's another thing, parenting-wise, is that the children are always listening. They're always absorbing everything that we say and watching what we do. So great takeaways. Thank you very much. Now, can you tell us where we can find you? Yes.
My website is Moneyvine, because money doesn't grow on trees. So MONEYVINE. And I'm quite active on Instagram, moneyvine.au.
That's fabulous. And I think that myself and you out there, we really need this kind of help, because it's really great to have someone that's easy to talk to and understands where you're at, and now even's got your personality under wraps as well. So
that's right.
It's been delightful talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lexi.
Thank you again, Kate.
As we wrap up, it's clear that the language that we use around money is significant with our relationship. Start again. As we wrap up, it's clear that the language we use around money significantly impacts our relationship with it, not just for ourselves, but for our kids as well. By shifting from I'm not good with money to I'm not so good with money yet, or I'm getting better with money every day, we foster a more positive mindset and a better example for our children. This positive psychology approach can be a powerful tool for growth. Our actions also speak volumes. Kids learn as much from observing our financial behaviours as they do from our conversations. One effective exercise that Lexi has given us to improve our financial habits is the traffic light activity. Spend a few minutes reviewing your recent transactions and colour code them. Green for essential expenses, red for regretful or joyful, and orange for those questionable purchases. This visual approach helps clarify your spending habits and sets a good example for your children. By fostering open conversations about money and modelling good financial habits, we can set our children up for a healthier relationship with money in their own lives. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.